start off, I was in a near-fatal car accident back in 2013 in June. Once I reached help, I went to OU Medical Center for surgeries, and my second back surgery went very wrong. They had clamped my chest tube, and I had suffocated to death. All of a sudden, my soul began to rise out of my body, kind of like my soul was like levitating, and it was kind of a painful experience, really, because it felt like the weight of my body was like being crushed as my soul was rising up out of it. And I rose to the ceiling, and I was looking at my mom and my doctor and the nurse, trying to figure out what's going on with me. All of a sudden, I was transported into these, what I like to call the tunnel of colors. All kinds of colors in this tunnel. I was going super duper fast, and all of a sudden things got super white, and I was in this waiting room. All of a sudden, these three men in robes, and as they were walking towards me, they had their hands out like this, as to say, "We mean well, don't be scared." But honestly, I was totally terrified. So I got myself in the corner, and I stretched up as far as I could in that corner, and just looking at them in terror and fright. And they took a look at me, and they discussed among themselves. And in my head, I heard them all say to me that, or amongst themselves, that she's not ready. She's not ready. And once they said that, I was transported into the tunnel of colors again. And I appeared on this hill. And on this hill, I saw the most beautiful scenery with so many awesome, vibrant colors. There was gold, and this gold was just unimaginable. Not like any kind of gold we see here on earth, but there were gold wheat fields to my left as far as the eye could see, and there were gold cornfields to my right as far as the eye could see. And in the middle of the wheat and the cornfields, there was a valley with a stream running down the middle of it. And as I looked further, I saw people and children, and this woman with a basket on her head collecting corn and wheat. And it was just such a beautiful sight. And I was looking around, and all of a sudden Jesus comes walking up to my right side. And I knew it was Jesus, because the vibe, just the aura that he had around him was just so breathtaking and so peaceful. And I remember looking at his white robe and his sandals, but I was too scared to look at his face or his eyes. And he all of a sudden went like this, as to say, "This is just a little glimpse of heaven. This is just a little bitty tiny piece of heaven that I'm showing you." And I'm just so honored that he did show me what I saw, and I don't think I'll ever forget, because it was just such a beautiful, beautiful sight. All of the colors, all of the aura, everyone was singing also. The workers down there that were collecting the wheat and the corn, they were so happy to be there, and they were singing beautiful, beautiful music. That was just so peaceful.
I could see them doing chest compressions. I could see them, all the nurses around. I could smell the most beautiful flowers I've ever.
Charlotte began describing things to Danny.
She started talking about the flowers. Well, I looked around, and I knew there was no flowers in that room. That's when I knew she was not in this world when that was going on.
Charlotte's heart stopped. For the next 11 minutes, she was clinically dead.
I was above my body. I could see Danny standing in the corner. He had backed up. I could see them all the nurses around. Then I opened my eyes. I looked around at the beauty. I could see the trees, I could see the grass, and everything was swaying with the music, because everything in heaven worships God. I can't convey to you what heaven looked like, because it's so above what we can even imagine, 1,000,000 times.
Charlotte says she was led into heaven by angels.
There's no fear. It's like pure joy. When the angels takes over, there's no fear. When you're going home, it's pure joy.
At first, we're like, okay, he's got the stomach flu, because the doctor said it was going around.
Colton's condition only got worse as days passed. His doctor discovered his appendix had burst. An infection was spreading in his body. Time was running out.
Then we knew we were in bad shape when they said, well, you need to come out to the hallway. They separated us from everyone else, and then someone came to us and started talking to us that we got to have surgery on your kid.
It was tough. Seeing your boy be lifeless.
And I just broke down and I was mad at God. I just frustrated, fed up. And I remember telling him, I said, God, after all I've done for you, and now you're going to take my kid? This is how you treat your pastors? Then I remember the nurse coming out. Is Colton's daddy out here? I'm like, yeah, well, Colton's in recovery and he's screaming for you. And I'm sitting there with him. And I remember my son in that room then looking up at me and goes, Dad, do you know I almost died? And my first thought was, maybe he overheard the nurse say that, or maybe they thought he was under anesthesia, and he wasn't. But it wasn't till 4 months after we got out of the hospital that we finally listened to our son.
And that's where I got to see heaven. No, Jesus and some angels came and flew me up to heaven.
And I said, so Colton, what did Jesus look like?
I knew that the first person I saw was Jesus. He was wearing white robes with a purple sash, and he just came down nicely and gracefully.
Well, Dad, Jesus has markers. Dad, Jesus has markers. I didn't know what he meant. So I finally asked the right question. Colton, where are Jesus' markers? And he drops his toys down, and he stands up, and he just points, Dad, they were right here. He takes his fingers, points to the palms, then he bends over and touches the tops of his feet and looks up to me. That's where Jesus' markers were, Dad.
When I was in the throne room of God to start with, so I got to see what that looked like. I was upset because I didn't know what was happening. What God did is he used people or things that I liked to calm me down. From there on, I felt better.
Then one day we're traveling together, and he looks up at me and, Dad, you used to have a grandpa named Pop, didn't you? I'm like, yeah, he's really nice. Really? Yeah, you used to play with him as a kid and work with him on the farm and shoot stuff with him. And I'm like, yeah, how do you know that? Well, he told me.
A figure came up, and he was Pop. He asked me, are you Todd's son? I said yes. He said that he was his grandpa, so that's where I met him.
Yeah, Pop, I was very close to him. And he was my most significant male role model when I was a kid growing up. But he was killed in a car wreck before I turned 7.
I was busy paying bills again, because that's my job. And he came up and told me he had 2 sisters. Well, he had to say it several times before he finally got my attention. And finally, I put myself down and looked at him and says, what do you mean you have 2 sisters? No, I have 2 sisters. You had a baby die in your tummy. And I just looked at him like, well, how do you know you have 2 sisters? Well, she told me. And then he proceeded to describe her.
She looked like Cassie, but she had brown hair. And first time when she saw me, she just came up and hugged me.
We knew this was true because he said, she kept hugging me. She wouldn't stop hugging me, Mom, and I didn't like that.
Well, I'm not really the hugging type.
I had miscarried the weekend of Father's Day weekend, which made it even rougher. And we thought we'd dealt with it. We gotten over it. We accepted that the baby had died. But when he said he had 2 sisters, I think I was in shock first and then trying to realize, what is he telling me? And so I knew that he had seen her, and after he described her, and he says, she's just waiting for you guys to come to heaven.
You know, as we talked about heaven and he was telling me all these wonderful details, I just felt like I had to ask him, did he want to come back?
I knew that I was leaving heaven because Jesus came to me and said, Colton, you need to go back. Even though I didn't want to go back, he said that he was answering my dad's prayer.
I remember that prayer. That irreverent, that disrespectful, screaming at God prayer. I was like, he's answering that prayer?
Today, Colton is a healthy 11-year-old and shares his heavenly journey with boldness.
I learned that heaven is for real and you're going to like it.
I began crying out and I began screaming out to God, God, forgive me. And the gun went off.
And when I held the gun initially, I placed it up to my head. And a voice spoke to me and said, remove that from your head. And I argued with this voice, and I said, no, because I'm going to complete this mission that I have started with. And so all of a sudden I get a vision of what I would look like if I was, to some bizarre reason, survive that. And then I got a vision of what I would look like, and I felt a compassion for my family. And so I listened to the voice, and I removed the gun from my head, and I placed it down at my heart. Pat, when I pulled that trigger, I knew my body was dying. I felt the blood rushing through my lungs. Death gripped my body. I became blind. I became deaf. And as my soul left my body, I began traveling faster than the speed of light. And I began falling and falling and falling. And all of a sudden, this explosion happened on the inside of me. It was as if there was like a sulfuric type acid burn that consumed me in every way. It was so hideous and terrifying. There are no words to describe the level of pain and the type of burn that I was experiencing.
What was it?
It was hell, Pat. It was what the Bible describes as hell. It was the fire of hell. And when I looked around, not only was I in a place of death, but I now had become death. I was no longer in a place where there was peace. I was in a place of total torment.
Were you terrified?
I had become fear. Pat, I could look out and I could see thousands, millions of people that were all around me, but I was unable to communicate with them. It was a huge sea of people.
Yes,
and there were many, many chambers that were all around me. And all of the people that were there were in the same formless being, screaming out in agony, in total terror, in a hideous scream. Then there was no end to it, Pat. There are no words to describe how horrific this was. That in my screaming and in my agony and in the revelation of what I experienced, God came down from heaven, and this hand scooped me up, Pat, and picked me up. And so when this hand picked me up and took me over the vast expanse, took me over that gulf fix, and it's huge, but to God it's just like a simple,
But that's what
simple
Jesus
dividing
said
line.
in the parable. There's a great gulf between us fixed.
Yes.
And there was a great gulf.
A great gulf, and it was of nothingness.
Yeah.
Dark, just nothingness. And when I went over that, and I entered into God's presence.
Yeah.
Pat, now, you can't describe God's presence either, but it was love. And I had now left a place of death and torment and darkness. And now I had entered into a place of love and light. And I experienced God's wholeness. I experienced His grace and His mercy. And there was unity with Christ that is indescribable. My pain was gone, my torment was gone, and I was in this presence of total wholeness. And you could see the lights, the beauty of the stones and the lights reflecting in heaven. And the very sight of them was rejuvenating and just energizing.
This particular part in heaven that the Lord showed me, it was a room connected to the library of heaven. This particular room had multiple different books, which each book was an individual and what they did in their life. That's all I was shown of what this was. And then, of course, I wanted to see my book. And then that was it. I was taken out of there. I was just shown this part in heaven, and that was it. I came straight this way, and when I came here, the angel that was sitting right here at this beautiful desk was writing on a book with a quill pen, one of those feather pens with ink. You know, you dip it in ink, and he was writing in some books. What was revealed to me is each book is someone's life, and their name is written on the outside in gold on it. And everything is recorded in your whole entire life. Every single aspect of your life, your heart, your emotions, your thought process, your attentions to every single thing, how you speak to someone, or what you thought of someone, what you did behind their back, or whatever it was. It's every aspect, every moment, every second of your life is recorded in your book.
Tina was able to breathe on her own, and once she was fully conscious, Dave placed a pen in her hand and held a notebook for her.
And she just started making marks, and I couldn't tell what it was, and I was almost shaking. I was fixed. I just held the book steady because I didn't want it to drop.
We figured out that she had wrote ITSREAL. It's real. And I go, the pain? The hospital? She's slowly nodding her head. Eyes are closed. She's fully vented. She's moving all this. And then my daughter goes, heaven? And she nods yes.
But as soon as someone said Jesus, a peace came across her.
I just looked at Dave and said, she's going to be just fine.
The doctor warned that she may not be able to speak for a while. However, Tina had a lot to say immediately.
I just wanted to share that I saw Jesus face to face.
And I was not in my body anymore. It was amazing to me how, when we read in the Bible, it says to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And it's amazing to me how immediately Jesus was standing right there waiting for me. And he started to talk to me, and he started to teach me.
And he pulled me up, and he hugged me so tight. And he never, during this time, let me go. And he didn't even have to say, I love you, because he who was love. And I knew I was the most special person in the world.
I was so excited. We went through a neighborhood, and it had the streets of gold. Many people were also greeting me.
As I descended into the throne room, we got closer and closer and closer, and it's like that tickly feeling you have when the elevator drops too quick, or you go over a hill. And we touched down into the throne room. And the glory of the throne room and of where God sits was unbelievable. There were these tiles about this big, some were a little bit bigger, but most of them were about this big, about a foot across. And they went down for, it looked like many, many feet. Some looked like they went for 100 feet, some went down for like 10 feet. But artists had basically carved artwork and then filled it up with clear resin, and then had laced it with gold. And there was the most insane piece of art. I'm landing, I'm stepping on it. And it's like the most expensive artwork that you're walking on. That's the floor of heaven, or the throne room. And I'm sitting there shocked. That was the life I lived? God poured his life into me. I'm thinking this, I know God made me. And I'm like, that was it? That was my whole existence? And it blew me away how empty it felt. And how upset I was at God for everything. It was all his fault. And he's like, the next words I hear is his name in the book of life. And I'm like, frick! I forgot about the book of life. In Revelation. as I'm rationalizing, like, what if I just claim a name? I felt like I was becoming dishonest. I'm like, I cannot be dishonest. I can't decide to just claim a name and go, oh, I'm Timothy, I'm Daniel, that's my name. And I felt like doing that. It was like this urge. And I was like, no, I'm just going to accept whatever fate. It was that same surrendering feeling I had in the wall of water that I had in the throne room. I surrendered again. And, oh my goodness, this is where it gets crazy. All of a sudden I hear, Jojo. He's naming all these names off, and all of a sudden goes silent, and I hear Jojo. And God stands up. He literally leaps off his throne. The mug disappears, and he faces me. And he's like, Jojo, you are not scared to stand up and say my name in public. You are not scared to stand up and shout my name and glorify me in public. You are not scared to give a glass of water to a young sibling. And he started my life over from the very beginning. He started when I was born in 1995. He rolled the scene back. He threw up the screens again. He said, this is how I see you. And I literally only saw good my whole entire life. He showed me when I helped our neighbors harvest their cherry trees. He showed me every time when he saved me from dying on a tractor one time. He showed me all these instances in life where he was watching over me. His hand was upon me. He said, I've had my hand on you this whole time, and you think I'm an angry God. And he's like, showed me everything, and he's speaking with this voice that just goes through me. I'm like, I don't deserve this love. I don't deserve to be forgiven by you. And he just like, he turned, he was from the side when he was speaking to me, he turned and faces me, and all heaven is rejoicing. They're shouting with joy, and he goes, I love you. You're my son, and I forgive you. I love you so much. I will heal you of what you're going through. And he basically shot this like rainbow laser fusion beam into my heart, and it hit me right on my chest area. And he just goes, whoa, right at me. And he basically gives me a huge hug. And I looked down, and I saw bitterness just fly off. I saw my
Tell us a little about heaven. Describe just like things you saw. You said at one point you saw a construction site or heard a construction site. Tell us a little bit about that. Just like, you know, even the grass. How did that look? Flowers.
It's tightly, it's like almost like this carpet, but it's tightly manicured grass that went up this huge hill. And on the other side of the hill, I could hear this magnificent, monumental, like some huge construction site going on. And I heard children. I heard adults. I heard people laughing. I heard them building. I heard people working with their hands, designing, creating. Like, I heard all that just with my hearing.
What do you think they were building?
I think a city. Lots of water slides, a lot of fun.
So heaven's not just like this resort we go to. There's work to do, but it's work we're going to love to do.
Yeah, no, there's like, God gives us work that we will feel like 100% purpose-filled. A lot of people think that like heaven is like a bunch of people with rings around their heads sucking lollipops on big fluffy clouds. That is the worst description you could ever think of. Think about doing what you love for all time with no pain, unlimited amount of resources, and unending wisdom. Like if you had all the knowledge in the world to do what you loved, you could become the ace of all time at what you wanted to do. So when God said, okay, I want you to study my word, and I want you to study music, my heart exploded with joy. Like first I had my arms around him, that's when God's like, okay, it's time for you to start your lessons. And I'm like, okay, let's go. And to back up a little bit, when he said it's time for me to learn two things, his word and music, he first showed me a flash. Like he could tell I didn't understand what that meant by studying his word. So he took the word righteous, he just grabbed it real quick, brought it right in front of me, and he flipped it on it so I could see it from the top. I couldn't read the word. He pulled out like 40-something definitions of what righteous meant. Behind, he said, Jojo, you think you know what righteous means, but I have something way more for you. Every word that I've placed in the Bible has been inspired by me, and every word has a deeper meaning. The naked eye can only see the letters, but the spiritual eye can literally see what is beyond that word. And so when we got into the kingdom of heaven, like that, we started walking up that hill. I could hear the city that was being built on the other side, or some huge event happening. The music lesson started, and the first one was a 5-part harmony, where you have your regular 4-part harmony and then you had subharmonic levels above and below them. And I remember thinking to myself, like, how can there be soprano, alto, tenor, bass, and then there's a level that the regular human ears cannot hear, that God was woven into it that would incite emotional feelings. And I remember looking up and seeing a bird flying through the air, and it started singing a tune, and all of heaven gathered behind that tune that bird was singing and played a beat. And like the symphony started. It's like dun 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 dun. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this is crazy.
I was standing in the hallway and I saw, yellow caution tape right in the kitchen. So I look and I'm like, what is going on? Why is there yellow caution tape? So I walk down the hall into the kitchen and I see like this big group of people standing there, and then they're all in a circle. I'm like, what are they looking at? Like, what's going on? So I look down into the circle, and I'm at a party. I'm supposed to be, having a good time, but like there's now caution tape, and I'm like, what is going on? I look down into the circle, and I'm in the middle of the circle, and everybody's staring at me, and my body is laying on the ground. And then I am like, whoa. So I try to like maybe communicate with people, or no one can really hear me. I look down, my body's not there. Like I have no body. And I'm just like, what is going on? Like this is just crazy. So like I'm kind of scared. Well, not scared, but I'm like, okay, obviously I died. I just knew at that moment, like, nobody can hear me. I'm not supposed to be here anymore. So in that second, I realized, okay, I'm dead. I look up. All of a sudden in the kitchen, I see this like huge white light coming from the ceiling to the floor. And it's just like, boom. And it's right there. And I just knew like, okay, that's home. Like that's where I'm supposed to go. So I had nowhere really else to go. No one was talking to me. I had no body. So I just like naturally moved into the light. So I went into the light. And as I was moving up into the light, I just started to feel so good. Like words can't explain it. Like the higher that I went into the light and the more that I moved up and further away from earth, the better I felt. And the feeling of pleasure does not really apply to this earth. Like, nothing can compare. Like if you took everything that you were in favor of, like maybe getting a massage in a hot tub, your favorite music, your favorite food, your favorite drink, everything that you love happening to you all at once, no matter what it is, all at once, it would not even closely compare to the pleasure that was just within that light. And then all of a sudden, as you're moving up into the light, which is white, right? Whitish light, the black starts disappearing. So all the black goes away because the light's taking it. And then the craziest thing was when I looked behind me, like all the way behind me from where I came from, I saw Earth, and Earth was like, it would be like you standing up and looking down and seeing like an ant on the ground. Like our entire universe was the size of an ant. Like it just made you realize how insignificant this life is. And, we're only on this earth for a short period of time. But after this period of time, there's an eternal life that we have to live. And I don't think many people know that, or many people believe it. I mean, I wasn't really sure. I didn't really 100% maybe believe it before this happened. And then after this happened, I was like, whoa, light. But I saw my whole life flash before my eyes. Every person I knew, everything I experienced, I don't know how it happened that fast, but I got to see my entire life all at once. And I honestly looked at my life and I felt like a complete failure. I felt like I had lived one big selfish life, which was only directed to myself. And I never helped anybody on this planet, or I never gave anything. To a substantial amount. Really, I just felt like I lived a life that was, I guess now I know the terminology, but worldly, So that kind of like, it was weird because, you know, there was that one disappointment up there. So that was kind of strange. Just to look at my whole life, like, it seems so big on earth. Like, my life was so important, you know, my friends, my clothes, like, all this stuff was like huge priority here. And then when you get up there, you look at it and you're like, it's kind of funny because you realize how small this planet is and how insignificant, like, your big life really is. It's just funny. The voice said to me, if you want to live, show it. And then the minute I said, okay, boom, it was like back out of the light, like back into darkness coming past me, back into my body.
So I was standing in heaven, and all around me, I saw and I felt perfect, bright, white light, and I felt the presence of perfect joy, of perfect love, of perfect peace, and of perfect holiness. I felt and experienced the presence of God, the holy presence of God, all around me and all inside of me. Like the entire place was surrounded with the holy, peaceful, perfect presence of God. And I saw Jesus Christ standing right next to me, dressed in white. And Jesus, he was standing, he was much taller than I was, and he began speaking to me, communicating to me without words. And he said, "This is your home, my daughter. You are a citizen of heaven. Heaven is your home." He said, "You are on the right path. You are a citizen of heaven, my daughter."